So to add numbers with fractions with different denominators, the students first have to know how to add numbers with common denominators, with the bottom number being the same. So in this example here, it's a really quick one. You can see 1/4, 1 out of 4, 1/4. So I've just drawn it out here. I have 1 out of the 4 pieces in a whole chocolate bar. And this next one, I have 2 out of the 4 pieces in a whole chocolate bar. So if I have 1/4 plus 2/4, I have 1/4, and then I get 2 more of the fourths. So now I have 3/4. So students know it's easy to add fractions with common denominators because you really only add the top number. And so if your child is adding the bottom number as well, you have to really make sure they draw these out so they can see that the bottom number doesn't change. I have 1 of the fourths, I get 2 more of the fourths, so that means I have now 3/4. Now, if it's the bottom number, the denominator is not the same. So I'm just going to move this up so you can see for a second. What we've talked about in class is I have, let's say, 2/4 plus, let's get rid of that for a second. Let me just do this first. We could talk about equivalent fractions. You have to make the bottom numbers the same. So if I look at this number here, 2/4, and I draw out 2/4, so I've got this, okay. Now I've got 2 of the 4 pieces. Well, if I decide to cut each of those pieces in half, so if I cut, I'm going to use a different line here, I'll use a color. So I cut this one in half, and then this piece in half, this piece in half, and this piece in half. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 pieces now in this whole chocolate bar. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 8 pieces. This is really the exact same amount that we started with. It's just we cut the pieces in half, but really, you put the pieces back together, it's still 2 out of 4 pieces if you really look at it. So 2 out of 4 is the exact same thing as 4/8. All we did was cut the pieces in half. But the amount of chocolate that we really have in this chocolate bar is still the exact same. So what we really did, by cutting them in half, is really we times each of these numbers by 2. So I times this by 2, and this bottom number by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. That gets us 4 over here. And 4 times 2 is 8. That gets us the denominator over here. So by cutting each piece in 2, that means we times them by 2. If I did the same one in fourths, now I've got this much of it. Let me just change the color again. Let's say we cut it into 4 pieces, each one. So I'm going to cut this one into, each of these into, so now there's 1, 2, 3. Oh, I need another piece here. 4, and then these into, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I got 16 pieces in this chocolate bar now. And if you count up these top ones, well, it's going to be 8. I have 8 out of the 16 pieces. And if you look at our original 2/4 here, I cut this into 4, each piece is into 4. Then it's like timesing it by 4. So 2 times 4 equals 8. 4 times 4 equals 16. So what the students learn then is really, if I have 2/4, I can times that by any number I want. And that just means I'm cutting the pieces up into that many pieces. But it's really the same amount of chocolate. So I can times this by any number I want. And why that's important is, if I have 2/4 plus, let's say, 3/8, well, the only way students know that you can add these numbers is if the denominators are the same. So I have to make these the same somehow. How am I going to make these the same? Well, I couldn't turn this 4 into an 8. So what do I have to times by 4 to make it an 8? Well, I can times it by 2. Well, if I times the bottom number by 2, then I have to times the top number by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So now I have 4 eighths is the exact same thing as 2 fourths. So 4 eighths plus 3 eighths, and like we did in the other video or earlier, if I have 4 of the eighths, I get 3 more of the eighths. Now I have 7 eighths. Now, we do know, I know the easy way is just, if I was going 2 fourths plus 3 eighths, you really just times, with the cross kind of multiplication, I'm really only timesing this by 8, this opposite number here, and then this by 8, and then this by 4, and this by 4. And that automatically works out. But the students don't really understand what's going on, and that's why we kind of explain it this way. So they really understand when you're making equivalent fractions, you're just timesing it by any number you want. And so when you're adding fractions, you can make the denominators the same by timesing them by any number that you want. In this case over here, I'm timesing 4 by 8 and 8 by 4. And so it'll make the denominators will be the same. So 4 times 8 is 32. 8 times 4 is 32. So the denominators are going to be the same, and I'll be able to add those up.